trauma. How would you define trauma?
The trauma itself is really deep rooted in, it really goes back to when we were a baby and how much our parents loved us, how much we were able to even receive that love, overcome a lot of personal trauma of my own. And I would just love to share that with others.
What it means for the person to take full responsibility for themselves in a situation like that.
It comes to our level of what we tolerate, because we tolerate what we think we deserve. We're supposed to be the most happiest, and we're the most comfortable generation ever in history. And we're the most miserable.
What do you think that's rooted in? What do you think why that is?
Just unresolved trauma from that our ancestors experienced.
Mm-hmm.
Humans have been really cruel over time and have treated a lot of different people in history for terribly.
Welcome to the podcast. Jesseca, you've seen trauma from both a clinical and a non-clinical, more personal experience and a lens. Can you help the listeners gain a deeper understanding from your perspective, having worked in an ER setting, working in ICU, and having had your own personal experiences with trauma? How would you define trauma?
Thank you, Stacey, for having me on. I really appreciate you inviting me onto your podcast. And well, trauma is a really complex thing. It's there's all of these things that we experience in life, and it's not like a specific event, or it's not something that we can all just be the same way. It's different for every single person. I may not understand someone else's trauma, and someone may not understand my trauma. And trauma doesn't always have to be a violation or some kind of physical trauma or words of hatred, anything like that. It's we're all sensitive souls, and it comes down to all of us individually having a self-transformation to overcome that trauma. But the trauma itself is really deep rooted in, it really goes back to when we were a baby and how much our parents loved us, how much we were able to even receive that love. And also, I believe in the karmic cycle, the wheel of life. It really depends on our soul's level of awareness and involvement.
Yeah. I love the fact that you brought it back to the beginning, because anybody that works with me, anybody listens to the podcast, they always know I bring it all the way back to the beginning. And I think it's really important for people to understand why that is. We talk about our ability as humans, and I always say on my podcast that people have to remember that we are first animals, right? At first, we're mammals. And so we have all these natural instincts when it comes to survival, and our mind and our body is designed for survival. Our brain is designed for survival, not for happiness or joy. It's rooted specifically in how am I making it through this moment, through this day. And so when we're first born, the ability to attach and that sense of safety and security is very primitive and very fundamental to our survival. And without it, we become very fractured, because we really need to rely on other people in order to meet our very, very fundamental needs. So as a nurse, I'm really curious about this. As a nurse, how did you see, maybe you weren't aware of it then or not, different people in maybe similar situations coping differently, dealing differently, now that you see it through this new lens? How do you think that their younger years impacted even their ability to be in a situation like an ER and ICU situation?
Well, it's different for every single person, and culture is a big thing that is something that, not that it's a determining factor, whether we deal with pain or trauma differently, but it's a huge contributor. And it's really an individual basis. And, someone could come from a family that doesn't love them, with parents that are unloving or that didn't really care for them very much. And it's not even things that have to be said, it's felt. It's all energetic. It's what we feel. If our parents are in a state of insecurity and of lack, then those get kind of transmitted to us. But that is what our souls come into this world for. Whatever vibrational alignment, whatever our level of awareness is at, that's what we that's the bodies and the person that we get sent into is where
Mm.
and every life is for evolvement. And I believe that we are programmed for joy. As human beings, we do have survival instincts, but a lot of animals are joyous.
Oh,
Like,
I think we're programmed for joy. I just don't think that that's the function of the body and the mind, right? I think that the function of the brain and the body is just to simply keep us alive. I don't think that it's not that we can't access
yeah.
it. It's just that's not its primary responsibility.
Yeah. Well, humans kind of have a silly biology because it's like we need care until we're at least 13, you know?
Yeah.
Wait, I mean, I'm sure humans could adapt and we could learn to survive since we're little kids, since we're 5, but mostly we need someone to protect us. And a lot of like animal mammals, they can usually, care for themselves shortly after birth.
Right.
So we're just a different species. And going back to your original question about seeing how people deal with trauma differently in an ER or just medical setting, it's always a shock to a lot of people when they have an illness or they have some kind of accident that happens. But it's always whatever happens to us in our life individually is always what we're aligned with. And it may suck. There's times where it really sucks and it's really difficult. But it always comes back to what we're aligned with and what we vibrationally call into it. It's really confusing at times because it's like, I didn't want this to happen to me. I didn't want to experience this. I don't want to be violated or I don't want to, break a limb or lose a limb. Um, but everything we experience is always it's so strange. This is my belief. I could be wrong. Everyone has different beliefs, but it's what we feel inside emotionally. And when we get aligned with something that meets that same vibration emotionally, then we're going to have an experience. And not a lot of people really understand that we're organic matter, that we are in a world filled with gravity and with things that are organic and inorganic, but that also can't withstand life in general. Like our souls live forever, but physically nothing lives forever. Nothing stays the same physically forever. And so many humans are just we're conditioned to want things to be the same. We don't like change. I have to have this way. It can't change. And if it does, then it's unstable and I'm scared or something else is, this is just out of order. But it's not. It's like we're in the most perfect order because things fall down, things break, things fall apart. And if we just happen to be there and it falls on us, it's just what we're aligned with and it sucks. But it's always I think life is always about our relationship with the higher power and us finding the best way possible to love ourselves through everything, no matter what.
I love the fact that this is becoming part of the conversation because it's not that common that I have people on. I tend to have like therapists and psychiatrists and psychologists or other types of trauma practitioners on, but we don't often talk about the karmic cycle and we don't often talk about the vibrational energy of the human. And I think it's really important because there are times when I'm working with my clients, I'm not I don't specialize in things like the law of attraction or manifestation, but I know enough of it to be dangerous. And, we do talk often about vibrational energy and how important that is. So I'd like to kind of bring that piece into the conversation. So maybe you can explain for my audience a little bit more of a primer of when you're talking about this type of energy and this type of vibration, what is it that you're kind of referencing?
This is something that I feel and know, but I'm still working towards mastery of.
Yeah.
I'm just a small human being on this earth. Um, but a lot of us are so lost in. I don't like. I'm not pointing fingers or saying anything, but a lot of society is so focused on psychology, and psychology is a crock of shit. Excuse my language, but
Listen, I'm
it's
not a
something.
therapist, so
It's something that we have, and it's true. But our psychology is a little bit, it's not true to the purpose of life. We have all of these things, it's like we destroy nature, we tear down nature, we pour something down an ant colony, or we do things, we kill animals all the time, and we are detached, or we're just kind of like, this is the way life is. But that's not the way life is. That's fine that we do it. Like nature and animals don't take anything personal. They don't hold any grudges. We do.
yeah.
We have all of these. we have a lot of needs, we have a lot of sensitivities, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just part of being a human being, and it's just the thing is that gets us that causes us complications is our psychology and the fact that we're so focused on what was said or what was happened and this and that and like what didn't work and whatever it may be, it's all fine. It's absolutely fine. But that really gets in the way of the true essence of life and the true power of healing. And I'm saying this from a perspective of having personal experience of witnessing this, experiencing it. But, this is a phenomenon that, I'm working towards mastery of. It's not something that I see all the time or that I'm capable or that I know how to be capable of all the time. I'm I'm coming from a place of just stepping into like a spiritual light over just in the last 2 or 3 years. So this is all still pretty new to me too. But when you kind of step into more of a place where you're receptive to spirits and a higher power, things just kind of just align. But it's things just get complicated because of our psychology and our
Well,
beliefs.
do you think it's so interesting? There's two things that are coming to mind for me. Number one, I've had a couple of clients in the past that are very spiritually connected to a higher source. And when I say that, I mean that, they are very talented and very skilled at energetic healing, things like Reiki, um, or they are mediums themselves. And they're coming to me. This is really interesting. They come to me as a client because they are very, very stuck in life. And I tend to do hypnosis with these clients because they're so, not the word's not eligible, but everyone's eligible for hypnosis, but they're very kind of primed for it because they're not afraid of it. Like a lot of people come to me with hypnosis and they're like, I want to do it, but I'm so nervous. Like they have a wider sense of self. And
Yeah.
so they see it as like this wonderful tool. And every time that I've used hypnosis with these clients, they say the same thing to me under hypnosis, which is so funny, which is the human experience is so hard because they have access to a higher sense of self. Okay. So they see it almost from like a drone's eye view, like this human experience. And so I understand what you're saying about that. And they will often say things to me like, my soul's been here many times, but this human experience is actually what's keeping me stuck because I'm rooted in this experience and it's so painful and it's so difficult. Number one. But number two, do you think the reason this is an interesting conversation when it comes to psychology. And again, I'm non clinical, right? So I don't believe in pathologizing. And I really feel very strongly that the majority of people that are walking around stuck don't have a disorder or
Mhm.
any kind of
That's true.
disease or disability. I think that they've had difficult lived experiences and that they have kind of lost connection with themselves because they're walking with so many different parts of them in survival. But the question I have for you is do you think, because I just finished moderating and I've read it many times, but I just finished moderating a book conversation for the Four Agreement. And we were talking about not taking things personally and not making assumptions and how we as humans are the species that holds on to shit, right? Where like an animal can be injured or hurt and like they're not sitting around and thinking about it the next moment. Do you think the reason why humans do that is because going back to what I said before, our body and our brains are designed for survival. And so they're trying to make meaning out of something. So, as a form of survival, if I understand it, I can prepare for it and kind of defend myself from it or predict that it could happen again or prepare myself in a way where maybe I could be safer. Do you think that that's possible?
Not saying that it's impossible, but I don't think that's our true nature. I don't think it's
Okay.
our true nature to try to prevent things. I don't think it's our true nature to be fearful all the time,
I
and
don't
it's
think it's our true nature, which in my work I would call self energy or self alignment. I think it is the nature of the parts that are developed in us to protect us.
yes, but there is a massive component of the societal conditioning that we all
Yeah.
have. And I don't know why society was created. I don't, it's where all of our souls are on a different level of involvement and the earth is a low plane of involvement where lowly evolved souls are. And I'm here, so I'm a lower evolved soul, and it's like there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with anything. There's a lot of things that I don't agree with, that humans do, but I think the solution to healing our trauma is, one of them is the four agreements, but also is the way that we project onto other people and the way that we deal with our aggressors and the people that do cause a lot of trauma. But it's like I'm sure I have unintentionally caused someone else trauma. That's not my intention, but because we have all of us have our own individual perception, we can perceive something as a certain way. And that can cause trauma. Like words do cause people trauma. And it's unfortunate. It just is what it is. It's not unfortunate. It just is what it is. But I think that we're more resilient, we're stronger than we believe as human beings. And we're just in a societal time where we're really, a lot of us are really repressed and really, when it goes and you look at like our food source, all of these materialistic things that we're creating and that we're taking from the earth, I guess that's kind of a lack mindset to say we're taking, but it's a gluttonous thing. There's nothing wrong with being gluttonous, but the thing is that we're miserable doing most of it. There's nothing wrong with anything today other than the fact that we're miserable. We're supposed to be the most happiest, and we're the most comfortable generation ever in history, and we're the most miserable. And that is doesn't seem to correlate.
What do you
We're
think that's
supposed to be more
rooted in? What do you think the why that is?
just unresolved trauma from that our ancestors experienced.
Mm,
Humans have been really cruel over time and have treated a lot of different people in history for like terribly, horribly. And I know it's like the four agreements is like don't take things personal, don't assume, but there's things that have happened to a lot of people in this, even in this life, this current lifetime that we're in, but a lot of even our grandparents, and especially from, different cultural backgrounds who've had some really terrible things, it's like, why is it that we can look like a great aunt, great great uncle, or someone like a great great grandfather, great great grandmother? We can look like them. We physically look like them. What makes you think that we didn't transfer any of their pain? We also
yeah,
transfer our joy, but negative aspects and painful experiences and like undiscovered or trauma that is unaware to us,
mhm,
it's stored in our body. And when we don't have that connection with the higher power and we don't have a connection with our physical body, and instead we have a rather more of identification. We identify with our body way more than anything else. But connection is different from identification.
yep.
And this is something that, I'm still working on. I'm working towards mastery of this myself. It's like I've come, oh my gosh, tremendously from where I used to be and how I used to feel. And I've overcome a lot of personal trauma of my own. And I would just love to share that with others that it doesn't, you know, this life we have problems. Problems are things that will always be there, no matter how much money or whatever our status is, no matter who we are, we will always have problems. It's how we deal with the problems, and how do we deal with it gracefully, or do we deal with it from a perspective of lack and self-hatred and blame. And all of it's okay. It's all part of our involvement. We're sensitive human beings. I don't understand why we were given an ego that can be evil per se, or just arrogant. I don't understand why a lot of humans want to, just go against each other. I don't get those things, but this is just the way this world is. And it really stems down to our emotions and our individual experience. And I'm from the US, I'm coming from an individualistic perspective, not from a collective. But I think it's really important for us to individually have a self transformation, have a individual strong self worth, a strong connection to our emotions and our body, so we can collectively come together
Yeah,
peacefully.
no doubt. So, how did your time as a frontline nurse inform your healing work? And how did it help you transform your own traumas and your own pain?
Well, Western medicine is um, it is a way, and I support trauma medicine 100%. Um, but it has be just like a lot of things have become so it's just crazy. And I've I've seen so many things as, working in the hospital, and I've never been to war, I've never been in the military, so I don't know what it's like being in that kind of environment. But I sometimes I felt like I was in a war zone, and it's just, I could be mistaken about that experience, but it's just, it wasn't Western medicine necessarily. I've seen several miracles that were just blew my mind for sure. And I still encourage everyone go seek, medical care if you need it, for trauma, but there's so many things that we can heal on our own, and with plants, and with someone who is a natural healer. Um, we're just a lot stronger than we realize. We don't need like all this medication and all this stuff that Western medicine pushes. And it was just kind of a rejection on my end, like me rejecting the standardized way that so many things in society said this is normal, and it's like this is not normal. This is
Can you
not
give an
normal.
example of something?
Just the amount of medication that people take,
Mm,
the amount of medication that I would have to give as a nurse, and that how many people think it's normal. And I'm just like, this just doesn't, this feels off. This doesn't feel right. So I I'm semi-retired from nursing. I still do home health right now, so that's a little bit more intimate, and it's a lot more personal and one-on-one with
yeah,
the people.
concierge. Do you
Yeah,
think part of the problem, because listen, I'm like you, like I'm not the biggest fan of Western medicine myself, right? I guess for me, I'm willing to do what I need to do that's been made available by the brilliant people who make certain pharmaceuticals. I have a handful of medications that I take right now because my body is out of alignment, right? However, I don't think it's the end all be all. And I
yeah,
think that I think what happens in our society is we either are someone that's very, very black and white, and we just go down this one route and we don't make a lot of questions and we just do what people tell us to do, whether it comes to, our bodies and medicine and pharmacological interventions, or you go way on the other end of spectrum and touch none of it, or you can kind of find yourself in the middle, which is where I find myself, where at the same time that I might be taking some things that are pharmacological, I'm also utilizing things that are more holistic that speak to my body, say like acupuncture or different kinds of modalities to try to get everything into balance. Do you think part of the problem, and this is my problem, and this is why I tend to lean away from Western medicine, is because they're looking to put a band-aid on a bullet wound. They're not looking for the root cause of a particular problem. They're just looking to, slap a medication onto something without really saying, well, there's another way we could heal it that we wouldn't need the medication at all.
yeah. Well, I mean, I always advocate for people to do what they feel is best, and we really have to have. We can do whatever we want. There's no problem. There's nothing wrong with what anyone does. It's okay, and that's the thing about the natural healing ability of our body is that when we feel that there's a problem, or we feel like something's wrong, or we don't agree with something, or we're doing something that feels iffy, it may work, but there's a better chance of it working when we feel about it. And it's easier said than done, it's easier said than done, but
Yeah.
it's really an individual choice of what someone wants to do. And I advocate for people to explore. It's a fact that we're born, we live our life, and we pass away to another realm, and that's okay. And in a lot of, in a worldwide perspective, death is unnatural. And it's not. No matter how people die, no matter how someone dies, it's natural. That we
Yeah.
just go back to, it may be unsettling, but we just go back to where we came from. And that's our true home is wherever our spirit is, and being more connected with our spirit. And a lot of the things it can be fear based, and it's completely understandable. It's scary. It's like when If we don't have, I wasn't raised by yogis. I wasn't in this realm of deeper connection with my body and emotions and the higher power within myself. I wasn't raised that way, which is absolutely fine. But it's like I'm discovering these things that I'm getting more physical proof with and changes, but I'm still just a human being. It doesn't always make sense. And, there's people who are, super spiritually inclined, like Sadhguru or Eckhart Tolle. Eckhart Tolle got stomach cancer, and Sadhguru, he had brain surgery. And it's like those people are so spiritually inclined. Why are they having physical ailments,
Mhm.
physical, problems per se? And that's just the nature of being a human being. We're
Right.
in a world where we're producing so many things. We're combining materials from nature and creating toxins that are toxic to us. But we're really resilient because we survive most of it. But over time, things just get a little change in our body. And if we're
Well,
not,
I think it goes back, and I want to move to another topic, but I do think this is really important because you said it earlier and I wanted to address it. This idea that we can look like our ancestors, but we can still inherit both, stressors and joy. And from an epigenetic standpoint, that's accurate. The experiences that many generations back have had, it can change the DNA structure within us, and we can be carrying actual stressors and pain. We can also be carrying our ability to be optimistic and resilient, right? It doesn't have to be one or the other, but it doesn't stop. It's a constant evolution from one generation to the next. And when I talk to people about carrying these invisible backpacks, I always say we're carrying 7 generations worth of experiences in and around our body that we have to be constantly decoding as well. I know that, you've mentioned at other times in your website, what have you, that you've walked through some of your own traumas, and this is what's been taking you on your healing journey. And I know that you've walked through infidelity and betrayal. I know you've created something called the Uncheated Code. How is it that you help people who feel that they've lost trust in themselves and others?
yeah, the cheater code is specifically for women who have been cheated on, who have experienced infidelity and are just having a hard time overcoming it. And it's an automated course that it's just, how do I explain it? I don't know. I think it's free. I made it, and it's such an amazing experience creating it, and I'm just so proud of it and grateful for it. But it's a simplified, quick kind of fix. I don't like saying that. Not a quick fix. It's a simplified way of getting quick results. Because I experienced a really traumatic infidelity a couple times. In my marriage, I was married for 10 years, and with that, and my next relationship after that, experiencing it again, and it was really debilitating. But over the course of 3 months, I was able to fully get over it.
And how
And
did you do that? What were some of the practices or some of the things that you recognized and realized in your process? Because I've had clients who have come to me that have had, series of experiences that are similar in nature. So in your case, infidelity, and sometimes they feel as though it's their lot in life or there's something that they're attracting. And they try to take accountability and ownership for it. It becomes such a murky little swamp when it comes to betrayal, trauma, and this kind of infidelity. So, how did you work through it?
well, holistically and spiritually, I can't go into the full details. I mean, like, I'm available. I'm taking, accepting more people that want to join. It's only $99. It's an 8-week course, and there's a support group that comes along with it. But it's holistically and spiritually, and as hard as this sounds, and as hard as this may be, it's always about responsibility. Are we responsible for our lives? Are we responsible for the way we feel, or are we giving our emotions and our life to someone else? Are we making someone else the dictator or the owner of us? And a lot of that happens a lot of times. And it really helps. It makes healing so much nicer and easier when we have a loving and supportive community for everything, you know. But a lot of times, our aggressor or our violator or someone who caused us harm or someone who betrayed us doesn't show up for us like that. And sometimes we don't even want them to be there, you know? It hurts, but it really comes down to our relationship with ourself
Right.
and with the higher power and how
And
much we love ourselves.
when you talk about responsibility, is what you're saying that we give people too much power by allowing them to influence how we feel about ourselves
About life in
versus
general.
yeah, versus that we are responsible for our own happiness, and any amount that we allow somebody else to influence how we feel about ourselves, which is very challenging, right? Like I hold space for a lot of people that are in narcissistic abuse where the offender is inclined to create harm,
Mhm.
right? And so when there's a trust there, and we don't trust that their intention is to harm, and it's done in such a calculated way that they don't actually recognize it's happening until they're so far into it. If you end up with that quote unquote trauma bond or that quote unquote codependency, where the person doesn't know where they begin and the other person ends, and where the other person ends and where they begin. It becomes this intertwined connection that's really hard to pull apart because they, for whatever reason, don't believe they can even breathe without the other person. So when you see something like that, how would you tell someone what their level of like I understand, but I want you to be able to explain what it means for the person to take full responsibility for themselves in a situation like that.
Well, responsibility for oneself is and emotions is a concept that it took me years to learn. I know how to care for myself and I know how to um, go in this life independently. And not everyone does, and that's okay. But taking responsibility for oneself doesn't necessarily mean that everyone has to do every single thing for oneself. But taking responsibility for oneself is being authentic and being the main decider or person that decides how one feels, regardless of others' opinions, of others' actions. That is something that I'm still even working on. I'm working towards mastery of that, but I've come a really far way. There's still things where I'm super sensitive to. I don't like being interrogated. I don't like being called names. And those are situations where I leave. I don't stick around. If someone calls, does any of those, I'm like, peace, I'm out. Those are things that I'm not going to tolerate. And it comes to our level of what we tolerate because we tolerate what we think we deserve.
Well, that's 100% correct. And I think also in those situations, what I hear very often for people is they don't even know how to prioritize themselves, right? That it's always prioritizing somebody else's well being, which again goes way back to the beginning. If that was a survival mechanism that you needed to utilize as a young child to have some of your individual needs met, it becomes your method of operation. You don't even realize that you're even doing it, and till you find yourself in a period of time where you have to now take that responsibility and actually make yourself the priority, and it feels completely foreign for the person to be able to do it.
Yeah, and that's okay.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with anyone's experience, and even though it may be painful, it really comes down to someone deciding what they want in life. And if, you know, they want someone to be, they want to be with someone that makes them feel a certain way, that's absolutely fine because we can influence each other. There's nothing wrong with anyone's decisions. It's we're conditioned to believe that we have to question ourselves and that we're wrong or that someone else is wrong and this or that, and just it really just comes down to someone individuals having a self transformation and a connection with a higher power in nature, in the simplest terms.
Yeah. So
How-
tell people how they can find out more about your work.
well, you could check out my website, magneticsoulhealing.org. And then cheat code, it's with Think IFC. I don't think I have it available on my website, but you can reach out to me on my website or Instagram. Magnetic Soul Healing as well. That's my Instagram name. For the link for the uncheated code, it's just an automated course that's 8 weeks. You can do it as little as 8 weeks, but you can take your time, and it comes with a support group. I do one on, group coaching every week with that. And I also do life coaching, nutrition consultation, and flexibility training.
I love it.
Sure. Yeah.
What's one thing that you would like the audience to know before we wrap up today?
That life is a lot more beautiful that than we realize on a massive level. There's so much more fascination and beauty and joy. And even though we do experience a lot of, you know, hard things and difficult things, it really comes down to us enjoying our experience of being alive. And that is something that takes time, and it takes, it's an individual experience. My experience may be different than everyone else's, and that's okay. We're all on this earth. We're the same species. We're the same race. We're not different. We look a little bit different, but biologically, we're 98% the same. And we just have different preferences and different choices and different languages, and it's all okay. This life is a really beautiful thing that we're supposed to experience. We're supposed to experience it with joy and with love and with compassion.
I
That's it.
love it. Guys, again, it's magneticsoulhealing.org. Jess, how do you pronounce your last name?
Banshee.
That's what I thought.
A
Okay, so
screaming banshee.
what'd you say?
Like a
Screaming
screaming
banshee.
banshee.
So it's Jesseca Banchy. She's a holistic healer, educator, and founder of the Uncheated Code. Again, you're going to go to magneticsoulhealing.org. Jessica, thank you so much for being our
Yeah.
guest today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You're so welcome.